Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. Carl Sagan said, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." Climate alarmists want to remake our entire economic, social, and energy infrastructure. Bernie Sanders just unveiled his $14 trillion plan, which would cost each American family about $100,000. In this video, I'm going to look at whether or not alarmist claims about Arctic sea ice are extraordinary and meet Sagan's criteria. Every day we're hammered with news stories about how the Arctic is in crisis and will soon be ice-free. This graph from the National Climate Assessment starts in 1979 and shows sea ice extent declining by almost 50% since then. It looks a little bit extraordinary. Let's take a closer look at it. In my previous video, I showed how the National Climate Assessment is hiding all of the pre-1979 Arctic sea ice data when extent was much lower. Arctic sea ice, like almost all processes in nature, is cyclical. But by starting their graph at the top of a cycle, the National Climate Assessment is trying to make you think that Arctic sea ice is linear. Based on the cherry-picked graphs of climate alarmists, around the year 2007 we started seeing all kinds of forecasts of imminent ice doom. 2008, expert Arctic polar cap may disappear this summer. 2008, North Pole may be ice-free for the first time this summer. National Geographic News. Swimmer aims to kayak to the North Pole. August 2008, BBC News. Could all Arctic ice be gone by 2012? Arctic sea ice gone in summer within 5 years. Seth Borenstein, Associated Press, National Geographic News, 2007. Arctic summer is ice-free by 2013. BBC News, December 2007. Gore, polar ice cap may disappear by summer 2014. Naval Postgraduate School, NASA, Arctic ice gone by 2014. In 2008, the world's leading climate alarmist James Hansen of NASA said the Arctic would be ice-free by 2018. Hansen, echoing work by other scientists, said that in 5 to 10 years the Arctic will be free of sea ice in the summer. Sierra Club, why Arctic sea ice will vanish in 2013. Mark Hartsgaard, the end of the Arctic ocean could be ice-free by 2015. Ice-free Arctic in 2 years heralds methane catastrophe. Scientist, The Guardian, 2013. Peter Wadhams, Cambridge University, estimates that 2017 or 2018 will see the first ice-free Arctic summer. These are extraordinary claims. Now let's look at the evidence. This is what Arctic sea ice extent has done over the last 13 years since the alarmists started making all these predictions of imminent doom. This graph shows data from the Multi-Agency Sea Ice Index, and it shows Arctic sea ice extent for every day going back to the minimum in 2006. As you can see in this graph, Arctic sea ice extent is cyclical. It goes to a minimum in the summer and a maximum in the winter. The straight line is the trend line since the 2006 minimum. As you can see, it's hardly changed at all. There has been a very slight and statistically insignificant downwards trend since the 2006 minimum. So when Nobel laureate Al Gore made his forecast of an ice-free Arctic by 2014, it's pretty clear that the evidence was not extraordinary. This graph shows annual cycles of our planet's weather as controlled by the orbit around the sun. Now let's look at longer-term cycles. This graph shows ice age cycles. The blue line is temperature variation over the last 450,000 years, taken from Antarctic ice cores. During ice ages, Earth's temperature drops quite a bit, and then we come out of the ice ages quickly and Earth warms up again. Does this over and over again. Yet another climatic cycle. We are very fortunate that Earth's climate operates in cycles. Otherwise, it would keep getting colder and Earth would end up like Pluto, or it would keep getting hotter and we would end up like Venus. Now we're going to look at a cool demonstration of cyclical behavior from Harvard University. We're going to look at a video of pendulums of different lengths and see all the different cycles they create. I thought that was pretty amazing. Next, let's look at another Earth cycle. This is Arctic temperatures going back to the year 1900, taken at the capital of Iceland. Eastern Arctic temperatures warmed a lot from 1920 to 1940, and then they cooled a lot from 1940 to 1979. Does that date sound familiar? And then they warmed a lot since 1979. So of course, Arctic alarmists cherry-picked their start date for their sea ice graphs during the coldest year on record in the eastern Arctic. They start their Arctic sea ice graphs right in 1979 at the beginning of a warming period, so of course Arctic sea ice extent is declining. This is not extraordinary evidence, this is extraordinary deception. This next graph overlays in red an ocean circulation pattern, the Atlantic Multidecadal Oscillation, or AMO. The graph provides strong evidence that Iceland temperatures are controlled by ocean circulation patterns which are cyclical rather than a linear increase in carbon dioxide. There's lots of historical evidence that the Arctic was very warm around 1940. December 17, 1939, glaciers melting over Greenland. All the glaciers in eastern Greenland are rapidly melting, declared Professor Hans Ullmann, Swedish geologist. It may without exaggeration be said that the glaciers of Greenland, like those in Norway, face the possibility of a catastrophic collapse. April 8, 1954, world's temperature getting warmer. In Spitsbergen, one of the places where accurate temperature records have been kept, the local temperature average has risen 18 degrees Fahrenheit since 1910, and the port is now open 200 days a year, nearly 50 days longer than it was back in the early 1900s. February 18, 1952, polar ice thaw increasing. Dr. William S. Carlson, an Arctic expert, said tonight that the polar ice caps were melting at an astonishing and unexplained rate and were threatening to swamp seaports by raising the ocean levels. The glaciers of Norway and Alaska are only half the size they were 50 years ago. It should be pretty clear now why Arctic alarmists pretend they don't know anything about the years before 1979. To finish this video up, I'm going to show you another demonstration of how you can create any trend you want by cherry-picking your start and end dates. This graph is Arctic sea ice extent from 2007 to 2017, and this line is the trend line. I'm going to move it around and you'll see how the trend line moves. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. We can create any trend we want if we're willing to cheat with our data. Now I'm going to show you another alarmist trick, which is to zoom in and make the slope much steeper. Here, let's do that now. See, I zoomed in and now the slope looks much larger in whichever direction we want to make it look. Mark Twain said there are three kinds of lies. There's lies, damned lies, and statistics. Arctic alarmists use statistics to enhance their lies. Climate alarmism is not based on extraordinary evidence. Rather, it's based on extraordinary deception. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.